and welcome to Life and the Bitter Truth. This is the podcast where we um, seek to understand the deeper, sometimes painful aspects of life and what it all means. My name is Vittorio, and my partner, Alexandra, is on vacation this week. So it's kind of apropos for what we're doing today in this podcast. Today, I'm going to be talking about the last 30 years of working for corporate America and traveling for corporate America and what the toll that took on me and my family, my kids. So Alex is on vacation this week, so I'll be connecting with her a little bit later because she did send me a question for our final segment. But I hope she's having a good time. So again, so this podcast today we're going to be talking about travel, travel for work. So if I can give you some context or some background. My career started as it relates to travel probably in the late 80s, I think it was. No, late 90s, 1998 or so, I think is what I remembered, or 1997. So it's certainly a long time ago. I was a software trainer. And so that was one of my jobs where I would go out to client facilities or client locations and train them on the software that they purchased. And so that took me up and down the coast of the West, right? The west part of California and northern, Washington in that area. So West Coast. And that was kind of the first taste of real travel that I got to take on. And, first, I think one of my first clients was up in Seattle, Washington. And I may or may not have shared a thought with the podcasts regarding one of those trips up to Seattle. But a lot of that trip, I didn't get to enjoy a whole lot of it. I mean, a lot of it was going to the office and going to dinner, and a couple excursions here and there. But you learn early on when you're traveling. At least at this company, it was a per diem. A per diem was given to me, which allotted me for food. And so, clients kind of bring in breakfast for you, and sometimes they'll take you to lunch. But for the most part, dinner was outside the client taking you out, and dinner was left to your own devices. And so I kind of saved a lot of money every night so I could go eat very well. And that was kind of something that somebody had shared with me is worse, the best thing you could do for yourself is take care of yourself, make sure you eat well. And yeah, so traveling, I got to eat well throughout the years. So I remember one restaurant that I just was enamored with over at it was near the fish market there in Seattle. I think it was called the Wild Ginger at the time. Great restaurant, and I would save every dollar I could for my per diem to make sure I would get there, have my dinner there, and whatever cocktail. I think they had a ginger martini, which was delicious. So one of those trips out to Seattle for this company, I know that I had dropped my laptop somewhere next to the airplane or wherever it was, and that laptop just completely got smashed, and another one had to get sent to me. And that was a whole fiasco where I cost the client probably 2 days worth of training because back then I had to get it overnighted with all the software loaded. I lost all my notes. You kind of create a lot of notes for yourself when you're doing training and you've become good at it. So, or at least my perspective, I was good at it, but it was a bit sketchy that time. But the clients are always generally very receptive and good and that kind of stuff. One experience out of Seattle I think I did share was coming out of one night where a client gave us tickets to a show, and I didn't like the show or theater or whatever it was, and we went back after that and going to the hotel, just hanging out at the bar, and we sat next to some girl who happened to be a call girl or escort or whatever you want to call it, and having that conversation with that girl was certainly interesting. But again, these are the kinds of experiences you get when you're traveling for business. And the late night drinking, of course, not good for your health, but it's part and parcel of hanging out with clients and or with your coworkers. Some things you need to do to kind of defuse the stress of the day was to just go have a couple cocktails and eat well. So those are some of the experiences that I know that I dealt with, certainly in going to in my early years of travel. Another great location where for the same company was Napa and Sonoma. That's probably where I was able to um, learn my affinity for wine, my enjoyment of wine, and I would leave. I think I would leave my home. I want to say it was either Saturday night or early Sunday. Take a flight out, and I would spend the entire Sunday. Um, just going through Napa and Sonoma and all the different wineries and enjoying, understanding, learning about wine. And it was such a great experience being able to do all that. And that's what probably formed my true love of wine early on in my early state. So I really got to enjoy that. And sometimes I'd go with the client, and sometimes I would be solo and just roaming around Napa, winery to winery, and it was really fun. Back then, I remember meeting a lot of the actual winemakers, and there was one event in San Francisco. I think the Wine Spectators Grand Spectacular, whatever it was, wine tasting, which I think is an annual thing. And I got some tickets, but I got them on the cheap because the client got me discounted or whatever tickets and stuff. And I actually didn't meet them there, a couple of the clients, and we just had a grand time. And I remember coming out of that event, and my wife at the time was pregnant, so she could not partake, but she was gracious enough to sit there in the lobby and keep herself entertained while I walked out. It was very comical. I walked out with black teeth. That's how much I was able to kind of enjoy all the wines and stuff. And so, of all the experiences that connect my future, or my life, well, that was certainly working for that company and being able to learn and enjoy aspects of travel for that company, which gave me a foundation for what became, quite the hobby for myself, wine and wine collecting and that kind of stuff. And that love of wine still lasts today, certainly. And I attribute that to my travels for that company. And that was a great time. Some of the downside certainly is I think my son was a year old, maybe, yeah, probably a year old. So that was tougher on myself because I would get dropped off at the airport and I would get picked up on a Friday, dropped off on a Sunday, picked up on a Friday. And I got to miss, I missed out, into, through the week, his activities and stuff. And that was a bit tough. I probably didn't connect it until I was much older as far as the loss of what that connection was. So, those are experiences again that just continued to unfold over the years where I traveled for work and stuff. So I eventually stopped working for that company, and I got a better job, of a more prestigious job, and that was in a large commercial outfit, real estate commercial outfit, where my first responsibility was to be on a plane to Singapore. And I'm telling you, I resisted because I really, not because I didn't want to go. It was because I just didn't know anybody there, and I didn't know the staff that I was going to be working with. And so it took me some time. I think it was 3 months where I was given. My boss gave me, "You got 3 months to get yourself acclimated and get on a plane because we need to start rolling here." With the people in Singapore, and my portfolio was based in Europe and uh, Asia. That was where I predominantly had to spend my time, and it was three specific cities in each of those markets. In Europe, it was Paris, London, and Rome, and in Asia, it was Singapore, Hong Kong, and Tokyo. So my first trip out to Singapore, I think reflectively, and remember, you keep in mind traveling to Asia, it's a long flight. So, I didn't really anticipate, because it was the first time I had been to Asia. So I was like, oh my God, it was certainly exciting. And I became very aware based on communications with others that I had to pick an airline that would best accommodate the benefits of traveling internationally. And for the company I was working for, I got to anytime I traveled more than 5 hours, I got to fly business class. So, it was important. So I ended up picking 2 airlines, which I was very consistent with, which was Cathay, and Singapore Airlines. Both were phenomenal, you know airlines to travel to, and the amenities that they provided for your flight, and the quality of the service was just crazy, crazy phenomenal. And I really enjoyed that aspect of it, where the lounges were good, and the flight was good, the food was good. It was really good, really good. First time I got to Singapore, I remember walking through the airport, and stepping outside waiting for a taxi queue. Um, I'm walking out the doors outside the airport into the terminal, outside the terminal, waiting for a taxi. Um, I remember getting this gush of humidity and heat, which I promptly turned right around and walked right back into the airport doors, just to get out of that heat. So that was probably that was my first impression of Singapore, as the level of heat and humidity that I had to experience. Um, and I finally got into the taxi, and all I could think of was, oh my God, why isn't this taxi driver, putting on the air conditioning? Well, only later to find out, they don't like air conditioning because they think it can get you sick. So that was one of the resistance I got from the taxi driver. I even begged him to turn it on, and I'd pay him more money and stuff. And he was trying to explain to me that it's bad for you and that kind of stuff. And he would roll down the window. I goes, please don't roll down the window anymore. Just And I just kept quiet and just kept marching forward until I got to the hotel room. But I was soaked in sweat because of that. And initially, traveling, I didn't anticipate the fact that I wasn't going to go right to the office. So I was wearing my suit, and suit, tie, the whole thing. And really, I didn't need to do that because at least I didn't uncover that until much later. But on another flight out to Singapore, I was getting into my seat. I was always on the upper deck. And back then, we used travel agents to accommodate or to book all of our flights. And that was always a cool thing because they took care of everything for you, put the itinerary together, flights. Well, everything was coordinated, transportation if you needed it and otherwise. So that was really good. Today we have to use Travelocity or whatever else that we use to book a flight. And today we're looking for the cheapest flights possible. Back then, I think the accommodation of being able to fly business class was pretty cool. So little different time frame, of course, but I remember getting into my seat on my next trip out to Singapore, and I was wearing my suit, and I had taken the jacket off. And the first thing they do is they offer you a glass of champagne. And I took that, and I just sat down relaxing. And I was still wearing my tie and my obviously my slacks and stuff. They give you all kinds of amenities, tracksuit or whatever the heck they want to call it, with all the toiletries and stuff. So I had just chilled out, drank the champagne, and was just relaxing. When we got to cruising altitude, they came around, and the flight attendant asked me what I wanted to drink, and I said, "Oh, I'll take a glass of wine." And sure enough, she brought over a glass of wine, and whatever happened, it tipped over, it got knocked, and it fell right into my lap. And I said, "Oh my God!" My shirt was red, my slacks were. I think I was wearing a dark blue suit at the time, so that didn't quite have the impact. But of course, it was just a nightmare. And boy, the look on that flight attendant's face was just priceless. She was in complete horror of what she had just done. And of course, you're gracious. Ah, it's okay, we'll figure it out. Whatever, whatever. But they like the quality of the airline, they just certainly took care of me. I got an opportunity to change into the tracksuit, and they asked me where I was staying, so they made sure that I got a voucher for dry cleaning and all of that stuff. And those folks, they were hovering around me during that event, and they were just apologetic and everything else you could possibly imagine for that incident. And they took better care of me, certainly, than probably some of the other business class flyers. So, just one of those experiences. Of course, I eventually stopped wearing a suit and just wore sweatpants and comfortable clothing because I knew I didn't have to get into the office right away. So I always had an opportunity to change into something, which was something you learn as you go along, right? Um, some of those aspects of flying, to Asia, of course, is the time zone differences. Those are always tough as well. So part of my travels, to Asia was Hong Kong, and I think I had a better time in Hong Kong than I ever did in Singapore. Not because I think Singapore then versus now is a completely different city. Singapore, some of those experiences in Singapore, the client takes you or your coworkers take you to what they think are the things that most foreigners want to see. Like um, to go have a drink at the Long Bar at the Raffles, so you can have a Singapore Sling, one of the famous drink that was created there in Singapore. So we would have dinners at the Raffles Hotel, and of course have those drinks and stuff. I didn't quite care for that kind of sweet drink, but it was good. It was a good experience, and those are the kinds of things that you get to certainly enjoy. I remember one outing we had in Singapore. Um, I was with a couple of the coworkers that I had worked with, and these are all expats. I think this particular individual was Australian, and he was real big. He was a single guy, so younger than I was at the time, and so he was paid in his home currency, but living there in Singapore, and his he was hell bent on making sure that I got to see Orchard Road. What I remembered always calling it is Orchard Street, but Orchard Road is I guess where all the nightlife is, the clubs and stuff. And there was one, I guess, right there on Orchard Road. I think it's called the Orchard Tower. I can't remember. It's been some time, but he wanted to show me this location where there were 4 floors of nightclubs of different nationalities of female entertainers. I guess that's the best way to describe it. But he would call it's 4 floors of whores, and this is where this guy spent all of his time, all of his downtime, and as somebody coming from the U.S. to this, and then everybody thinks that that's one of the great things to go see is these touristy. Not I don't think it's touristy, but it was some of these risque places that go and check out stuff. So he seemed to frequent it all the time. So I remember going one time with him and just amazed at how many people, young ladies there were, and of course, just a lot of expats. That's certainly what I remember the most of that particular place. I can't say anything negative about Singapore other than it was, people were wonderful and very sweet and all that good stuff. But I didn't get to spend a lot of time visiting what I would consider, sites in Singapore. Unlike Hong Kong, where Hong Kong, I was able to enjoy a lot more of it. And I remember the first time out to Hong Kong. Maybe it wasn't the first time. I really can't remember, but I remember one trip out to Asia, and I was heading into Hong Kong. I didn't pack my suitcase that time. I let the wife pack it, and I'm not blaming her, but so it was kind of funny where everything was packed for me with the exception of undergarments. And I get to the hotel. It's a long flight again. I think I took Cathay to get there, which again another great airline. And I get there, I'm unpacking, and I see no undergarments. So I immediately get on the phone with the guy that I connect with there, who lives there in Hong Kong, and he tells me, "Don't even worry about it. We're going to go over to Stanley Market and go and get you some stuff that you can get. So and no problem whatsoever, no big deal. Super cheap," he told me. So we went, we did all that. I got it all, got back to the hotel, and then I immediately, called downstairs to get it all laundered. And the cost of laundering, getting the stuff cleaned was, more. I think it was 5 times the cost of what the actual garments were. So it was just crazy expensive. So, the only thing I can really say is, you want to make sure everything's packed before you leave. That's for sure, because otherwise you may be missing stuff. And of course, that happens when you're traveling for pleasure as well. So these things kind of just happen. So you could certainly get pissed off about it, or just adapt to it. So Hong Kong for me was much more exciting. I think I got to enjoy it a lot more with people that I had really connected with, and they took me over to Victoria Peak. That was an important area that they wanted to show me because there was a little bit of downtime because of the time of flights and stuff, getting in there and before we really had to get in and start working and stuff. But so I got to see Singapore from that peak. I'm sorry, Hong Kong from that peak, and we stayed in or we ate a lot in Wan Chai. Um, for some reason, I really got to like this one restaurant called the Lemongrass. Um, it's Thai food, and it was so delicious. And this company, I did not have a per diem. I had an expense account, and I just used it as I needed and whatnot. But expense accounts were used, both mine and my associates there in country. So this is what we did, and what I did is I managed a global portfolio of real estate for a company that was based in Dallas. So that's kind of what I was doing during this time of my travels internationally, and just got to enjoy that. I remember one trip out to Hong Kong. I got to do a little bit of reading, and there was somebody had said, and I was reading about it, that you got to go visit the wet markets in Kowloon. So I certainly took a ferry boat over to Kowloon, and it was certainly an eye opener to see the wet markets in full action and the amount of people, and they're carving up animals, for food and whatnot, chickens or goats or whatever it was, fish, and it's just done right there in the open, and it's quite the experience to see it all in action and to watch it. Not for the faint of heart, but it was certainly something interesting that everybody said you got to go look at it because it's certainly interesting and fascinating to watch. So you know the travels to Tokyo. I only got to go to Tokyo one time. Just I think the cost of going to Tokyo was just a little bit more prohibited, and I think because the Asia Pac region was managed out of Hong Kong, I probably spent more time in Hong Kong than I did in either Singapore and certainly Tokyo. But I got to go to Tokyo. It was for a longer trip, and I remember that at this point my children are a little bit older. They're still kids, but I remember my son asking for Pokemon stuff, and I got to Tokyo, and of course, you go to work and you're going to the offices, and you're dealing with the business at hand and stuff. And the Japanese are people who like to decompress with drinking and eating, and that could go on quite the time into the evening. So you're working 10, 12 hours a day, and then you're going to hang out for another four. Oof, that was tough. That was real. That takes a toll on your body, like you can't even imagine. So that was certainly a tough situation to do. I was younger, so of course it didn't really have an impact necessarily, But the upside to that was I remember going to the Pokemon Center there in Tokyo. And I don't ask me where it was at the time, but I got I had to wait in line for 2 hours, and I just, of course, I'm not a big fan of sitting in lines for anything, food or otherwise. So I certainly did that, and I did it because I know my kids wanted Pokemon stuff. So I got in the store, and I was, had my basket, and I was just grabbing stuff. Oh, he's gonna like that. They're gonna like that. this? And it really was. I grabbed so much stuff, and then I realized, what am I doing? This stuff's expensive. So I ended up putting a bunch of stuff back, and but eventually settling on some nice pieces for them. And I think my son to this day probably holds some of those things pretty, cherishes them, and he's a big collector of stuff, and he sells stuff, he flips stuff. So I'm assuming he may have already flipped some of this stuff. Other stuff he's probably kept for sentimental value, because that's the way my son is. So that was pretty cool. I was able to do that and come home and see their faces when when I gave them all that stuff. You know, the tough aspects of flying that kind of distance and that kind of time zone was you really needed to get yourself acclimated to making sure you knew where they were, because me preschool or school at the time, and my mother really stepped in to help out, uh, getting them organized and off to school and whatnot when it was my time. I think I was already divorced by this time. So of course that creates a whole host of additional complications to life, because you're divorced and you've got your custodial time, and you're using some of your custodial time to travel because you've got no choice in the matter. Was tough. It was quite the burden. So you know traveling to Asia, and then of course having to travel to Europe. Paris, I think it was London was my first stop, and I would do a rotation every other month. I would have to be somewhere. Not to mention Dallas, of course, because unfortunately was where my boss was based, and I was in California, so that was always a requirement. Anytime I would travel international, I would have to stop in Dallas and debrief and discuss, the portfolio and where we were with it. So that was always added extra time, or it was an additional trip that had to be taken. But yeah, I think London. Getting back to Asia real quick. I had been to Singapore and Hong Kong so many times I can't even remember anymore. It was that many times. Same thing with London. That's where our offices were based for Europe. So again, it was so many times going to London that if somebody were to ask me during that time frame, "Hey, you want to go on vacation to London?" I would say absolutely not. No way in hell am I going to go to London. It's not that I didn't like London. It's just going there so many times and getting on a plane just wasn't something that was pleasurable to me. So London was where I was based as far as Europe went, and some excursions to Rome to go see the Rome office and or the Paris office. Those were not very frequent, but I know that heading over to Paris, I know that the client there, same client, different offices. They took us to, I think it was the Moulin Rouge was one night I remember. Um, and Paris and Europe was not something that was new to me. I had done pleasure trips to when I say pleasure trips, I had gone to Europe um, on a honeymoon as well as solo. So I got to see Europe quite a bit before I'd ever gone there for business. So it was great. I already so to go see the sights. I wasn't that interested, only because I'd already seen everything. So um, I think the time I went to Paris, I don't think I ever went to the Moulin Rouge. So that was probably a newer experience. And of course, when you're traveling to on business, you're staying at much better accommodations than you would if you're going to pay for it yourself. So I remember staying on New Bond Street. That's where all the luxury brands are and whatnot. Very nice area of London. So you can't afford that when you're doing it yourself. So that was pretty cool, of course. And the British, they do things a certain way, and you certainly kind of get into it with their way of doing things. Whether it's 4:30 at the pub and everyone's having a having a pint or whatever it is. It's true. That's what they do after work. So then people get established and getting ready for dinner and probably more drinks and stuff. I got very close to one of my coworkers who actually worked for the client that I was working for, and so he was client. He was working for this company, and I was managing the portfolio, and he was assisting me in doing that out of Europe. And his favorite place to always be, of course, was Hong Kong. But he was based in London. And he every single time I got there, he wanted to go out to dinner and out to a gentleman's club. And I had told him that it's kind of tough being working all day long and then going through all that. And I really wasn't a big fan of these gentlemen clubs and stuff. But he just was enamored with going to them. And one time he took me to one after we had gone to dinner. I remember the restaurant because he took an ashtray from the restaurant. So I think it was called the Zinc Bar. That's all I can remember. But after that, we had gone to some gentleman's club, and he was ordering bottles of champagne. Um, I remember it was Tattinger that he was ordering. And by the time that evening was done, I think we had racked up, or he had racked up a 4,000 pound bill. Um, he goes to me, "Hey, can you put this on your expense report?" I said, "Absolutely not. I'm meeting your boss in 3 days. I'm not going to do that because that he's not going to accept it. He's not going to approve it. So I'm certainly not going to do that. And I didn't want you to order this stuff. So heck, that's on you. I can't deal with it. So and 4,000 pounds, you do the conversion. That's a big dollar. So that certainly did. I certainly had nothing to do with that. And a little bit of a dispute there for for a short time, but beyond that, we stayed close and friendly. We didn't go out to a gentleman's club anymore because I certainly wasn't going to partake in that kind of behavior because I just, that kind of money just for, entertainment value just wasn't my bag. So I just wasn't going to do it. So, but yeah, again, time zone differences and connecting with your kids is always the pain of traveling, internationally, of course. So, I had gotten over time. I think I had gotten a little tired of doing um, travel to Europe and stuff, and I think my portfolio was shifting. So I was actually moving off of that account and moving into another account where I was going to be based managing Latin America, and my principal locations. I think there were I don't know 7 different cities in Latin America. Principally, it was Mexico City and Buenos Aires and Sao Paulo. Those were kind of the major areas, and only later to find out it was less of a portfolio, but more of a general leadership role in managing the Latin American division, multiple portfolios, and that was good for me. I was thinking it was less, obviously less hours on a plane, which was good, but unfortunately the frequency picked up. So I traveled quite a bit to Mexico City, um, a lot. It was at least every quarter, if not more in some cases. And then within Mexico, there was Monterrey and Quintanilla Roo was another location in Mexico that I had to go to. Um, in Chile, it was Santiago. In Argentina, it was Buenos Aires, and of course, in Brazil, it was Sao Paulo and Rio de Janeiro. So, Mexico City, the Latin American people throughout both, Mexico and South America are just some of the warmest people. And I got to really, there was a closeness with those people because I knew the language. I know the language, and so I was able to connect at a deeper level with them, and where I would get invited to family dinners and sporting events and birthday parties. And one thing that always struck me about the Mexicans there in Mexico City, um, they just love to sing and go to clubs and really enjoy themselves. And it was always striking that some of these, really tough brokers, A personalities just letting it loose and singing their hearts out, having a few cocktails, and got to meet lots of their wives and all the spouses and a lot of the children too. And I got the same. I got a little less of that behavior or that outwardness when I got to Brazil. Brazil was a little less. Um, outward or out there like that, but still very warm and inviting. In Mexico City, yeah, I think the biggest concern I ever had was probably the security concerns. You know, they were. I think that back then there was a lot of kidnappings taking place. I never felt unsafe in Mexico City. Not me whatsoever. Now I did have a driver that would pick me up and take me to the office, and occasionally as I got more and more engrossed in the work I did, they would just one of the staff members would just pick me up, and we would just I was I had the ability to get to and from locations wherever I needed to with support of the office or a driver that would be hired. So I never felt unsafe in Mexico City. Monterey is to me was close. Uh, it was reflective of God. I want to say it was like the Palm Desert. It was just so. It was laid out so nicely. Monterey was, and Quintanilla Rome. I can't remember anything there, but just interesting. I got to spend in Mexico because I was there so often. I didn't really get to see a lot of Mexico. Mexico's a very big city, so you don't. It's kind of spread out. Um, so I didn't get to see. They took me to I think it was the La Merced Market and the red light district. I know one of the brokers wanted to go there and show me that area, but beyond that, it wasn't really anything of any consequence where I got to see a lot of Mexico City. Um, my mother had some family friends there in Chapultepec, which I did connect with one or two times, but um, not very often, of course. You really can't do that because you just don't have that kind of time. But this is the wealthy part of Mexico City. When you think of Mexico City, you might think of Tijuana, but that isn't the case. Mexico City is just a wealth of wealthy people, or wealth of wealthy people. There's just a lot of wealthy people there in Mexico City. They're very highly educated, and you know, it shows with their levels of sophistication. Mexico City is like New York amped up to 10. So that's how dynamic that city is. So had a good time in Mexico City, just in the sense of connecting with people primarily. Got as I was mentioning earlier, I got really close with people, and they got connected with me, and I would invite them to when they were in the states. They got to meet my family and my kids, and stay in my home in Las Vegas. So I got to again got connected, and I'm still friendly with a lot of the people out of Mexico City. Um, so that was a great experience, and which I enjoyed thoroughly. And I think that kind of made the travel a lot easier because I was kind of going back to go visit friends as opposed to just traveling for work. So that was always nice. I got the same levels of experience when I traveled to Brazil. Brazil was another place where I went. That was less because of the flight location or the city location. It was probably two times a year, sometimes three. Um, and Brazil at the time, or Sao Paulo at the time, was dealing with quite the menace of the favelas, which was the slums that would go right down to the street level. And I know Sao Paulo took a lot of work before those Olympics hit. And I'm not sure of the timing, but I just remember it just wow, just shock at how much that um, of those favelas, they called them slums, were just everywhere. And I still again didn't feel unsafe, but it was heightened because I was told that you have to be careful. So, well, I always had somebody driving me here and there, so it was always great. So, got close with those folks as well. And I remember one downtime week, a couple days before we were leaving Sao Paulo to go to Rio de Janeiro to go see the office there in Rio, and we had a day off, and my controller, the one who worked for me, wanted to take me to the Christ the Redeemer statue, the Christ that or the statue with the extended arms there in Rio de Janeiro, famous landmark and stuff. So got to do that. I don't think I ever would have done that on my own. Just it probably wouldn't have been something I wanted to see or do. But sometimes you're shocked and surprised at the adventure that you get to do, um, even though you may not have wanted to do it. But it was fun. We had a good time, and we got to explore quite a bit. So that was always that's always a good time. Um, when I got to Buenos Aires. you know, again, these are all, Latin America. They all speak Spanish, so it's very comfortable for me, and I enjoyed again the people and stuff in Buenos Aires. I think the only striking piece of memory that I had there was that I know I was assaulted in Buenos Aires. We were going to dinner, and my work, the people that I worked with, were just waiting outside the bank while I went in, and somebody followed me in while I went to the ATM, and literally assaulted. They pushed me, tried to grab the money out of my hands. It was a female and a smaller gentleman. And I call that I said gentleman because I'm being respectful there. But yeah, they pushed me, pinned me against the wall, and tried to grab my money. And it was a scuffle, and I fought back. And I don't recommend that necessarily because they could have pulled a knife and a gun on me. But I defended myself before the folks who that I went to dinner with or were going to dinner with was watching this before they ran in to assist me. And we took them down, and the police were called, and yeah, I walked away with my money, but not injured at all. But that was certainly an experience that a memory of Argentina. Not a I won't say it's not a negative necessarily in the or a blemish on Argentina, but yeah, that was something that I remembered. Coming back to my offices here in California, and just describing it to my coworkers here, what took place and stuff. And of course, you have to write an incident report, all that stuff. But it was it was certainly it's certainly an interesting experience dealing with that stuff. So going working in Latin America and working in Asia and working in Europe over time just became all too consuming for me. It did take a toll physically. I seemed to be getting sicker a lot more. Um, and of course, my kids, heavily impacted by that, by all the distance that I had, unfortunately, was placed between us, and that just became too much for me. Where I just said to my boss, "I can't do this anymore. I've got to stop." And which was nice. I eventually was able to find a position in the same company, but domestically, I was running the Western Division um, for the company. Uh, out of downtown LA, which in retrospect, driving downtown LA every day was kind of a bummer because you're stuck in traffic. So, but it was a lighter workload for me because I didn't have to travel anymore internationally, which I thought to me was great because I was so fed up with travel, I couldn't do it anymore. And you know, one of the things that are striking when you're working this hard for a company and you are putting yourself out there, you've got a work ethic, and you want to do a great job, and you want to make sure that you're seen, and people are connecting with you. When a company takes an economic downturn, and it doesn't really matter sometimes how high up you are, um, they're gonna they're gonna get rid of you just like they would get rid of anybody. So all of that level of dedication and work you did in the years preceding is just like all for nothing because and why I say all that is be mindful of you young folks out there that are just starting your careers and traveling and you're required to travel for work. Life work balance is no joke. Take care of yourself first because companies won't. So it's very important, make sure you take care of your relationships. If you've got small children, avoid travel if at all cost. I got smarter towards the end as well, and I made people come to me here in the states. But of course, by then it was already I was already tired of it all. So that's what I would recommend anybody who is dealing with that. And I understand, requirements of work is sometimes difficult to control. But I think that in a retrospect, somebody who did it for so many years, I would recommend to do whatever you can to minimize that level of trouble, especially if you are with someone who have small kids, because it's just not worth it. Just not worth it. And of course, the toll on the relationships aren't worth it as well. During that, I know during that 10-year stint, doing a lot of domestic stuff as well. I had gone to I think 17 cities in the U.S. where this client portfolios were based as well. So global portfolios are just that. It's everywhere. So traveling to Kentucky, Boston, or New York City, or everywhere. Every single office wants to do something with you and take you somewhere. Their specialty of that city, everything from having to go visit the campus at South Bend, Notre Dame campus. For some reason, that was something that was very proud of, and I understand. Um, oh, Colorado Springs. I can't even remember so many different cities. I know I spent a lot of time in Miami, Florida, because that was the gateway to Latin America. So, again, I could tell you city after city. I've got probably three or four bats from the Louisville Slugger Museum because that's what was given to me every single time I went to Louisville. But I didn't get to enjoy Louisville like I got to enjoy it when I went on a pleasure trip to Kentucky. Um, you know, so traveling for work, certainly very different. People think you get to travel and see all of these locations, all of these sites and stuff like that, but they don't remember that. They don't think about the fact that you really are working 10, 12 hours a day, and you don't really have time or energy to go see sites and stuff. If you can eke out some time to go do it, then you do it. Otherwise, you're on the plane, you get there, you work, and you're back on a plane coming home. So not really fun as much as people think it is. Certainly an experience. You get experiences, absolutely get to see and do certain things. But again, the toll was just not worth it. To me, it wasn't worth it. The trade offs, But for pleasure, I think that what I got to enjoy over the last years. Of course, I traveled to Europe many times for pleasure. All over the states, I got to travel for pleasure, fun stuff and whatnot. And over the last 3 years, I got to enjoy um, a trip to the Maldives, which, if you've never been, it's a bucket list place. You just are going to be enamored with the beauty of these islands. It's just so magical. And it's kind of funny when I started traveling for pleasure. One of the most important things I always started was at the airport with a cocktail, and it just became this thing where I don't care where you go, you got if it's local or if it's international. We start off our vacation with a cocktail, and it's kind of funny. I would yell out cocktails, and it's just I got that. And I don't think I made that up. I think it was somebody, one of our Mexico City brokers. We were at the Bellagio, and he kept yelling out cocktails, and it was just that stuck with me. So I kind of used it or leveraged it for some comedy on some of my own pleasure trips. But the Maldives was just phenomenal. We had such comedy on the airplane with a screaming baby, and it was just that was a bit of a tough, and that was a 23-hour flight in total. So I've got pictures, two fisting drinks when we got there because it was just we were just so exhausted from the trip, and we had a good time in the Maldives and stuff. Got to scuba dive again. I hadn't gotten a chance to scuba dive since I think Jamaica or Hawaii. I can't remember. But lots of those kinds of excursions when you're traveling for pleasure is just great decompression time. So especially when you're with somebody that's certainly special to you. Um, our trip to the Maldives was just I think was a starting point to a lot of local trips. And well, we took a trip to Kentucky. That was kind of what I wanted to do. And we did the Kentucky Bourbon Trail, which was 4 days and 5 nights of just slamming every single distillery I can get a hold of, get tickets for, and we just had such a blast. We were just on the go, and just enjoying each other, and of course the atmosphere at the distilleries, and just the vistas of Kentucky, and all the hills and whatnot. Just beautiful area, and such a good time. Anybody ever is going to go to Kentucky and do the Bourbon Trail, do it. It's fun. So that was always that was certainly a blast. And then I know recently we had just gotten back from Tokyo after so many years going on. Uh, being there, I had been like I think I hadn't been there in 20 years. Which I described earlier. This time I worked with my partner to coordinate our time and our travels. We had everything plotted and planned and all of these things. And Tokyo is no small feat. It is a huge, huge city. And we wanted to make sure we did two cities at a minimum. We wanted to do more, but it was just impossible as far as timing goes. We went to Kyoto, and of course we stayed in Tokyo in both and Kyoto, and it was just it was just fun time. We walked like crazy. It was midsummer, so of course it was hot, humid. We did things that I didn't think I wanted to do, but she certainly wanted to do it, like the geisha experience. Oh man, if you can do it, do it. It was fun. Getting dressed up as in the local garb and in the costume, I think I would call it, and doing the tea ceremonies and looking at the geishas and being able to ask the geisha questions. That was pretty cool stuff. It was great memories and stuff, and we were able to bring back some nice things for our now what we would consider grown children. That was pretty fun stuff. So, again, that is certainly a different experience than traveling for work and stuff. So, yeah, I think over the last 30 years, I got to see quite a bit of our world and meet quite a bit of people, and the experiences were certainly enjoyable. The travel itself, again, does take a toll on you when you're doing it for business, not for pleasure, because there is no downtime. But and again, if you're going to do it, do it. It's certainly if it's a requirement, but if you can avoid it, and you've got small children and a young wife or a young relationship, take care of those things first because those are paramount to ultimate survival. This segment, I know that my daughter Alexandra is on vacation, enjoying her downtime, and she did send me a question. So I'm going to read it off to you. How do you plan to prioritize family with travel? And if and I think what I was reading from the question is, well, the benefit is I don't have to travel for work anymore, which is great. So I don't necessarily need to prioritize that issue anymore, or that situation, because I just don't travel for work anymore, which is great. So the secondary follow up to that was, where would you like to go as a family on vacation? And again, outside of my youngest daughter being only 17, I would love to go with the entire crew to Kentucky again to go do the Bourbon Trail. We've talked about it, and it's certainly something that we've got planned or hoping to do. And of course, hopefully we'll get to do it. But if I were to say outside of that, I would love to take a trip to back to Italy, the northern part of Italy, and enjoy that part of the region. Quinton, the Cinque Terre, and northern, Milan, and all those parts, as well as on the coast of Italy. I think that would be a great, great time to experience with my kids, certainly. So that would be something that I would love to do. Just hopefully that one day we'll be able to get that done and plan that. So that would be great. So that was the question that my daughter had posed in our segment. Is what I always wanted to ask, and that was something that she had posed before she left. She didn't give me the question; she sent it to me, I think, last night. Um, so I just got it. I got it, and then so it wasn't something that I was aware of. So thank you for listening to this solo podcast. It certainly gave me an opportunity to share the last 30 years in some form or another, and I certainly appreciate you. I know Alex does as well, and she'll be back next week. And please stay tuned, and thank you. And please listen to us on YouTube. Subscribe to our channel, and certainly like and comment on our stuff. And we're always willing to listen to criticism if there is any. And you can also hear us on all the platforms that put out podcasts, everything from Spotify, Apple Podcast, iHeart. and Amazon, just to name a few. So please continue to listen in to us, and hopefully we'll keep bringing more stuff, more content to you guys. So again, thank you so much. I appreciate you, and so does Alex. Take care.